Arkansas isn't what it seems. Behind the forests and rivers, behind the small towns and quiet roads, there are fractures. Places where the laws of nature slip, where silence moves like a living thing, and where history forgot what it buried. These are not ghost stories. They're not urban legends whispered in the dark. These are real reports, filed, recorded, and left unanswered. And tonight, you'll hear 6 of them. But be warned, some places don't just keep secrets, they keep you. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and whatever you do, don't look away. The Singing Cave of Newton County. There's a cave tucked deep in the Ozarks that's not marked on any official hiking trail. Locals call it Whistler's Hollow, though no one agrees on why. Some say it's because of the way the wind moves through the stone. Others say it's because the cave sings, but only when you're alone. The entrance is narrow, hidden behind a collapsed ridge, surrounded by thick moss and blackened roots. To find it, you have to follow a stream that disappears underground and listen, not for the water but for the absence of it. The deeper you go, the quieter the world gets, until silence becomes physical, thick, like smoke in your ears. And then, the sound begins. Visitors describe it differently. One said it was a child humming a lullaby in reverse. Another called it a single sustained chord that vibrated their teeth. A woman who entered alone said it was a voice, not hers, not human, singing something she almost remembered. She passed out for 20 minutes. When she woke, her watch was broken, and in her pocket there was a stone she swore she'd never picked up, smooth, with a faint symbol carved on one side, a circle split by a jagged line. This wasn't a one-time event. Park rangers have received scattered reports going back decades, stories from lost hikers who heard music but found no source. A college group recorded audio inside the cave in 2004. Most of it was static, but at exactly 12:19 a.m., the recorder picked up a high, piercing tone lasting 13 seconds. It wasn't feedback. An audio engineer who reviewed it said the waveform was structured, almost like sheet music. She tried to recreate it. She never finished the file. The cave isn't deep by geological standards, but those who enter report losing track of time, forgetting why they went in, or in some cases forgetting their own name, just for a moment, long enough to panic, long enough to realize something is listening. One hiker described the sensation like this: "It was like the cave was singing me back to a version of myself I hadn't been in years. I felt erased, and then rewritten." In 1987, a local teenager went missing for 24 hours. He was found just outside the cave entrance, barefoot, dehydrated, whispering a tune his parents didn't recognize. When asked where he'd been, he replied, "I was inside the sound." The cave has no name on maps. No official study has been published, but the geology of the Ozarks includes dozens of undocumented limestone pockets, places where resonance behaves unpredictably. Some believe this cave forms a perfect harmonic chamber, a natural amplifier for infrasound. Frequencies too low to hear, but strong enough to affect the brain. Others think it's older than sound itself. There are carvings on the inner walls, not deep, not obvious but worn into the stone. Circles, arrows, eyes, teeth. One symbol appears again and again. A human ear, split down the center. Those who return from the cave often find themselves humming days later. Songs they don't know, melodies they can't describe. And when they try to record it, the audio always cuts out. One explorer, a musician, wrote this in his journal after visiting: "I didn't hear the cave. I think the cave heard me, and it sang something back that I haven't forgotten, but I can't remember." They say some caves hold echoes. This one holds memory in vibration, waiting for the right voice to match the pitch. And just past the ridge, beyond where the trail ends, there's still something humming, very softly, but it's getting closer to the key. The Blevins basement that burned cold. It wasn't a big fire. That's what makes it worse. A 2-story farmhouse on the outskirts of Blevins caught fire late one August night in 1954. No lightning, no storm. The house just ignited. Neighbors reported seeing pale smoke rising from the windows, almost white, like steam from dry ice. The fire department arrived quickly. What they found made no sense. The top floor was smoldering, walls blackened, beams split, furniture warped beyond recognition. But the basement, the supposed source of the fire, was intact, unburned, dry, cold, not untouched, frozen. According to official reports, the temperature in the basement was 38 degrees Fahrenheit, despite the building still smoking above it. Metal tools were coated in frost. A pitcher of water had turned to slush. And in the far corner of the room, firewood, stacked neatly, was covered in a thin layer of ice. There were no sprinklers, no refrigeration systems, no chemicals, nothing that could have explained what they found. The strangest part was the scorch pattern on the door leading down to the basement. It wasn't charred in the center, but around the edges, as if something had pushed fire away from that space, like the fire had refused to go near it. The homeowner, Thomas Kell, survived. He told investigators he had fallen asleep on the couch and woke to the smell of something sweet, not smoke, like burnt sugar. He opened the basement door to investigate and felt a wave of cold hit his face, followed by something else, a sound he described as cracking teeth behind a wall. He never set foot in that basement again. The fire marshal's report listed the cause as undetermined thermal anomaly, but off the record, one firefighter reportedly told a local journalist it was like the fire stopped on purpose, like something told it to freeze. Kell moved away a year later. The house stood abandoned until 1960, when a new family moved in. They didn't know the story. Within 3 months, they were gone. The basement remained locked. When asked why, the father said only this: "Something down there doesn't want warmth. It remembers cold." In the years that followed, hikers and thrill seekers began sneaking onto the property. Most came away disappointed, but a few didn't. One man claimed his flashlight dimmed every time he pointed it at the basement door. Another said he placed his hand on the doorknob and immediately pulled back. His skin felt frostbitten, though the air was 80 degrees. A local teenager recorded himself exploring the ruins in 2002. The footage is mostly uneventful, until he enters the basement. The camera captures his breath fogging, even though he's wearing a t-shirt. He whispers, "It's so cold," just before the audio cuts. For the next 47 seconds, there's only the sound of creaking wood and something else underneath, like ice cracking from the inside out. When the footage resumes, the boy is back outside, sitting against a tree, shivering. His lips are blue. He never remembers leaving the house. Scientists suggested everything from cold gas leaks to spontaneous refrigerant chemical reactions, but no evidence of either was ever found. Locals began to say the basement wasn't cursed, it was reclaimed, that something deep underground had never accepted the warmth of fire or the presence of people, that it had once been buried and forgotten, until someone built a house on top of it. The ruins have since collapsed, but the basement's foundation still exists, covered by weeds and time. Occasionally, hikers report patches of frost on the surrounding stones in midsummer. One explorer who returned last year said the area made her dizzy, nauseous. She put her hand on the foundation wall and described it as the feeling of standing too close to something that doesn't want to exist. They say fire consumes, but what if it's not the only thing that spreads? What if cold remembers what warmth tries to erase? The man who dissolved in the Ozarks. He left early in the morning. Harold Keyes, age 42, was a quiet, methodical man, not a hiker, not a thrill seeker, just a surveyor, contracted to walk a portion of the Ozark Highlands Trail to mark new boundaries for a conservation project. He told the park ranger he expected to be back by dusk. The trail was simple, well marked. No rain, no fog, no cliffs. He never came back. The search began less than 24 hours later. They found his car, his trail permit, a thermos still warm, a single boot print at the trailhead, and then nothing. No drag marks, no animal signs, no broken branches, just silence. Like he had stepped off the edge of something that wasn't the world anymore. 3 days later, they found his backpack. It was placed, not dropped, on a rock ledge overlooking a dry stream bed. The contents were neatly folded, food untouched, water bottle full, GPS device powered off, notebook still dry, closed and clean. Inside the notebook there was a single sentence written in Harold's handwriting: "I'm not lost, but I'm not here either." The search expanded. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers, but no trace of him was ever found. And then his dog came back. Lucy, a black lab mix, had gone with Harold that morning. She returned 6 days later alone to the exact parking spot where they had left the truck. Clean, calm, uninjured, but completely bald. Veterinarians said there was no sign of disease, no burns, no trauma, just skin, perfectly healthy but hairless, as if something had removed every follicle one by one. Lucy refused to enter any wooded area again. Months passed. Then came the second anomaly. A hiker, unrelated to the case, was walking a stretch of the same trail in early spring. About 4 miles in, he found a pair of boot prints in the soft dirt far off the trail. They matched Harold's shoe size, same tread pattern, but they weren't fresh. They were embedded under the leaves, not on top of them, almost as if they'd been printed into the earth before the forest had dropped its cover. In 2009, an amateur filmmaker shot drone footage of the region for a local documentary. While reviewing the video, he noticed something strange. A man, standing still at the edge of a clearing, facing the trees, wearing beige. When he zoomed in, the figure had no visible outline. The body was blurry, but the shadow was perfect. Crisp, unmoving, alone. When he returned to the exact location 2 days later, he found a single item, a metal survey marker, Harold's initials etched into the edge. The authorities called it a case of accidental disappearance, wrong turn, sudden medical issue, animal predation, but none of those explanations survived scrutiny. His GPS showed no deviation from the trail, no storm, no blood, no trace. Some believe he stumbled into a cave or a crevice. Others think he may have had a mental break and wandered until he perished. But those who knew him say that's not possible. He was organized, focused. He had a system for everything. Nothing was ever left undone, except Harold. A few hikers in the region have since reported something odd. A sensation, not of being watched, but of being subtracted, like part of them stops walking, even as their body keeps moving. One woman said she saw something out of the corner of her eye, a man stepping behind a tree and never coming out the other side. When she checked, there was no one there, but there was a print in the soil, and something else, her reflection in a puddle nearby, was facing away. They say nature reclaims what's left behind, but what if sometimes it reclaims what's still thinking? And what if the trail didn't take him anywhere at all? What if it simply took him apart? The poisoned town of Crosset. At first it was just a smell, like burning plastic mixed with vinegar. It lingered in the air, especially at night. People said it came from the plant, that massive paper mill just beyond the pine line. The locals were used to it. That's just Crosset, they'd say, half laughing, until people started dying. Not old people, not sick people, healthy adults, children, families who lived downwind. Crosset, Arkansas, is home to one of the largest paper-producing operations in the South. But behind the jobs and the industry is a story most people don't want told. Between the late 1990s and 2010s, the death rate in certain neighborhoods began to rise sharply. Not slowly, not randomly. Entire streets lost multiple residents to cancer within a few years. One family lost 4 members in under 6 years. All lived next to a drainage canal that flowed behind their home, a creek the color of motor oil, slick and slow, carrying runoff from the plant. When environmental activists took samples, what they found was terrifying. Formaldehyde, arsenic, chloroform, dioxins, chemicals known to cause cancer, neurological damage, even cellular mutations. And still, the company denied responsibility. They called the deaths unfortunate, tragic, but unrelated. They cited lifestyle, genetics, bad luck. But people in Crosset didn't believe that anymore. A group of residents began documenting everything. Photos of dead fish lining the creek, video of thick white foam rising from drainage ditches during rainfall, kids with nosebleeds that wouldn't stop, trees growing warped, leaning like they were trying to move away from the water. Then came the most chilling discovery, an alley where 11 out of 15 homes had lost at least one person to cancer. Locals named it Cancer Alley, and it was real. Still, nothing changed. State and federal agencies opened investigations and quietly closed them. Reports went missing. Scientists who spoke out were discredited. Families who demanded answers were ignored. One activist, a former mill worker named David, walked the creek every morning, filming the runoff. He started having seizures. His wife found him one night unconscious in the backyard. His last recording was of the water behind their house, rippling unnaturally against the direction of the current. He died 6 months later. The death certificate said natural causes, but his lungs were burned black from the inside without a single cigarette ever smoked. There were whispers that strange things happened near the drainage canal after dark. Some said the water made sounds like whispering. Others said dogs refused to drink from the stream, even in summer heat. A few claimed that birds never landed in the area. One woman reported waking up to find her faucet running blood red. It tested normal within an hour, but she never drank tap water again. In 2019, a documentary called Company Town tried to bring national attention to Crosset. It featured interviews, data and faces of the lost. Still, the town remains. The plant still operates, the smoke still rises, and the water still moves, slow and dark, as if hiding something it refuses to release. Because this isn't a haunting in the traditional sense. There are no ghosts here, just footprints, graves, silences too loud to ignore, and a question that no one has been able to answer. If a place can poison your body, can it poison your memory too? Because some residents say they remember their town feeling cleaner, brighter, safer, but when they look back now, it's like that version of Crosset never existed at all. The Singing Grave of White County. You don't hear it at first. There's no wind, no crickets, just the kind of stillness that presses against your chest. The kind that tells you something is listening. Judsonia Cemetery is like most old graveyards in Arkansas, overgrown, leaning, forgotten by time. But there's one grave, hidden under a twisted cedar tree near the edge of the property, that people whisper about. Because sometimes, especially on warm nights in September, it sings. Not a melody, not lyrics, just a soft tonal vibration, like a flute buried in dirt, playing a note only your bones can hear. It hums from beneath the earth, and if you're close enough, it resonates in your chest. Locals call it the Singing Grave. There's no headstone, only a fragment of limestone worn smooth with age. No name, no date, just an engraving. A circle with 3 vertical lines, like sound waves pressed into stone. The first stories go back to the 1920s, when a group of children playing hide-and-seek near the cemetery ran home terrified. They told their parents the ground had started humming under their feet. One child said he heard his own name in the hum, but no one else did. In the 1970s, a man walking his dog at dusk claimed the humming changed pitch as he approached. He described it as a perfect A-flat that grew louder when he thought about someone he had lost, not said aloud, just thought. The phenomenon doesn't happen every night. It doesn't seem to follow the wind, the weather, or the calendar. But when it does, it always comes from the same spot. Some people describe the sound as warm, like a lullaby. Others say it makes them physically ill, nausea, pressure behind the eyes, teeth that ache without explanation. One woman who tried to record the sound brought 2 digital devices. Both captured perfect silence, but when she played back the footage, her voice, off mic, could be heard saying, "I never gave you permission to sing." She swore she never spoke those words. Researchers who visited the site suggest underground vibrations, perhaps from distant train lines, or deep aquifers shifting under pressure. But seismic data shows nothing. And the sound doesn't carry. It's not audible from more than 10 feet away. It's not recorded. It's experienced. Like something communicating through resonance, not words. A musicologist who visited in 1999 claimed the tone changed depending on the person. He brought a tuning fork, stood over the grave and listened. The grave matched the note before he even struck the fork. He left Arkansas the next day. Never published his findings, but his field notes were leaked years later. One line stood out. "It sang me my grief, in a key I didn't know I remembered." Some say the grave doesn't contain a body, that it was never meant to bury someone, but to hold something down. A sound, a memory, a frequency that never stopped vibrating. Others believe it's just a trick of the mind, A coincidence, but if you stand there long enough, still open quiet, you might feel the vibration rise through your shoes, up your legs, into your ribs. And if you're unlucky enough to hear it match your breath, you'll never unhear it again. Because some graves don't rest. They listen. The lake that rejected a town. It was supposed to be progress. In the 1940s, the US Army Corps of Engineers began construction on the Norfolk Dam. The valley behind it, rich, wild, filled with small farms and logging towns, was flooded to create the reservoir that became Lake Norfolk. The towns went under. Entire communities, homes, roads, cemeteries. They say the government relocated everyone, paid out families, moved headstones, but some graves were left behind. Locals tell stories of Norfolk's flooded bones. Divers whisper of submerged houses perfectly intact, tables still set, curtains moving underwater when no one stirs the lake. Fishermen speak of sonar pings that return, shapes that shouldn't be there. In 1982, a diver named Sam Brewer descended to check a sunken structure near the lake's south edge. He was experienced, calm, methodical, but when he surfaced, gasping pale, he said only one sentence: "There's a front porch light still on." He never dove again. A year later, a team of surveyors using early underwater video equipment reported something stranger: lights flickering in the deep. No electricity, no source, just pulses, like someone flipping switches in homes no one lived in anymore. The footage was quietly shelved. The lead technician changed careers within 6 months, but then came the drowning. A 14-year-old boy disappeared while swimming near Hand Cove. No current, no waves, no wind. His parents turned around for seconds. He was gone. When they recovered the body 3 days later, his lungs were filled with water, but his clothes were dry. His fingernails had mud under them, despite no trace of soil near the shoreline. The story spread in whispers. Some said the lake pulled him under. Others claimed he never drowned at all, just slipped below into something that doesn't forget who was buried in its foundation. A retired ranger once described a pattern in Disappearances, always in the same region of the lake. Always when the surface was perfectly calm, he marked a map with a red circle. Inside that circle, the ruins of Henderson, one of the towns lost beneath the water, and Henderson wasn't empty when it was flooded. They say some buildings collapsed slowly, roofs caving in under pressure, floors warping in slow motion, like the town resisted going under, like it refused to be drowned. And even now, something beneath the surface moves differently. Boat engines cut out, GPS scrambles. One drone operator flew over the lake and recorded interference in a perfect circle, like a ripple that never stopped. The footage cut out for one frame and came back showing a strange image, a window underwater with something pale pressed against the glass from inside. He deleted the file, but some say the lake doesn't need video to be remembered. It needs silence, stillness, and if you stand on the shoreline just before sunrise, when the mist is still thick and the water looks like glass, you might hear something from beneath. Not a splash, not a bubble, a knock, faint, hollow, like someone tapping on the inside of a door that no longer exists. 6 mysteries, 6 fractures in reality, some deep underground, some hidden in plain sight, but all very real. Arkansas may look peaceful from the outside, but beneath the surface, something ancient still watches. And if these stories stayed with you, if they made you wonder what else might be buried in the quiet corners of America, don't stop here. We've uncovered more. Explore the playlist of real mysteries from other US states. Stranger than fiction, closer than you think. But remember, some doors don't close after you open them, and some places wait for your return.